Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is April 15th, 2019, also known as Tax Day, so I hope you got all those in and finished. I'm sure you're not happy about it. Who is? Uncle Sam gets his fair share, doesn't he? But I hope you all enjoyed your weekend. Thank you for joining me today. A few stories we're going to touch on today has to deal with Mr. Trump texting or tweeting once again in relations to the Federal Reserve. So we're going to have a discussion on that because I think that's going to become front and center, especially in regards to the 2020 political campaign. So that's something that we're going to remain focused on here at the Capital News. We're also going to discuss some of the politics of these sanctuary cities and illegal immigration because that was some of the news over the weekend. So that's more of just, I think, some political jousting, again, having to do with 2020. And I think it's actually a smart move by the president and the administration, not necessarily to actually bus or to transport illegal immigrants to sanctuary cities, but it's just a political move. And I think it's a smart one for the president, especially regarding his base. And also we have some news in regards to the Mueller report will be released to both the public and Congress, is what we're told this coming Thursday. Of course, that will be a redacted version, which was expected from us here and anybody really with any understanding what was going on in regards to the report. But we will most definitely hear from the Democrats and complaining because it's never going to be enough. But we'll, again, recap on what's likely to happen in regards to that release. And then lastly, thank goodness, there's really not much news regarding Brexit. So I'm going to give you guys a break and myself a break because I'm getting tired of talking about it. But again, it's very important to me and it should be important to all of us. Again, not just because of the economic situation that will unravel. Again, I think a lot of that's fear-mongering. It's not going to be Armageddon for the British people by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to be bumpy with a deal or without a deal, but it's a lot of fear-mongering. I'm more concerned with it on the principles of democracy and the institution of democracy, and the people voted. So you got to fulfill that promise. You got to fulfill that will. If it's bumpy, you know, too bad. If it's difficult, too bad. Resign. If you can't do your job, resign. Have the honor to resign and say you couldn't do it. I mean, at least give the people that. But deliver on Brexit. So we got a break. Thank goodness. Now, getting to President Trump and his tweet regarding the Federal Reserve this weekend on Sunday, not only, again, was it a tweet, it was also an official statement. So let me read this to you because when I saw this tweet come across, I had to do a screenshot of it on my phone, but then there was also an official statement. So let me just read this here for you. So the White House, Office of the Press Secretary for Immediate Release, April 14th, 2019, statement by the president. If the Fed had done its job properly, which it has not, the stock market would have been up 5,000 to 10,000 additional points, and GDP would have been well over 4% instead of 3%, with almost no inflation. Quantitative tightening was a killer. Should have done the exact opposite! Exclamation point. This was the exact tweet that the president sent out. And again, this was also an official statement from the press secretary from the White House. So the president, again, has the Federal Reserve in his crosshairs. What does this mean? It really comes down to this being one of two things. The president, as we have argued here many times, has foolishly taken ownership of the economy and the stock market. He wants this thing to make new highs, all-time records. We are in the midst of an economic miracle. You know the jazz and the gist of it. That's what we hear all the time. That's what I talk about here all the time because it's important to discuss because this is going to be front and center come 2020. It's front and center now, but the volume and the frequency is going to get turned up. And that's also what we're starting to see here because I told you the president was going to start dancing, and that's exactly what he has been doing for the past few weeks now. But again, he is turning up the volume and the frequency at which he comes after the Federal Reserve. Before it was just a little, oh, they shouldn't have done this, they shouldn't have done that. Now it's coming out with outlandish things and saying, well, if it wasn't for the Federal Reserve and what they did, we'd have 4% GDP. Now he's saying it would be well over 4% instead of 3%. And of course, after the revisions, it's not quite 3%. It was 2.9. So very close, but not the 3. did not have the 3 handle. But again, he's saying it would have been over 4 had it not been for quantitative tightening. Also, he's making the claim that there is almost no inflation. That's basically towing the government line, saying it's 1.8 to 2%, which we all know is not true. It's much higher than that. Look at your grocery costs, look at your energy costs, look at your utility bills, look at the new costs out there for vehicles, for homes. I mean, everything's going up, up, up. Education, health insurance, medical care. This stuff isn't going up 2%. You wish it went up 2%. You have no earnings on your savings account. So, I mean, it's pathetic. But that's the government line. That's what we will continue to hear. We will also continue to hear that, again, we are in the midst of the best economy ever, which is not true according to our analysis here at the Capital News. Now, the other statement that he said, which he has not stated, again, this outlandishly before, is that the stock market would have been up 5,000 to 10,000 additional points. That's huge, ladies and gentlemen, 5,000 to 10,000 additional points. It's hard to say that that's not the case. I mean, that's why the president is sort of smart in throwing this out here, because you can't really prove that negative, right? I mean, would it have been? I mean, it's such a woulda, coulda, shoulda, you don't know. So he can make these types of statements, and who's going to really argue otherwise? Especially, he's trying to do this, again, as an attempt to get himself out of the box that he has put himself in by taking ownership of the economy and the stock market. But when you say that the stock market, and of course here, when he's talking about 5,000 to 10,000 points, he's referring to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which now sits at 26,000 some change, as being up a lot higher. Well, that's 30%. That's 30% higher, he's claiming. That's not small potatoes. 30%, I mean, if you can make 30% on your money, that's fantastic. You'd be one of the best investors for the year doing that. And he's just talking about broadly, the whole index, up 30% if the Federal Reserve had done their job, what he says, properly. Now, again, this goes back to where I was a very strong proponent and supporter of President Trump when he was candidate Trump in his regards to discussing the Federal Reserve and saying that quantitative easing was a problem that has been crippling the United States and was benefiting not general America, but those top 1%ers such as himself. And we've heard other comments from hedge fund managers saying the same thing, that this has been the largest wealth transfer in the history of mankind. And it has been, and it's been global. This is why, again, if you follow the economic podcast of the Capital News, we've been talking about hedge fund manager Ray Dalio in saying that income inequality is at extremes and that something is going to give here sooner or later. Well, that's as a result, a direct result of quantitative easing. So the president was attacking it. You have some hedge fund managers who are quasi-attacking it because, I mean, they've been beneficiaries of this. I mean, they've grown their wealth, multiple times over this past decade just because they own financial assets. That's where this money trickled into. That's where the funny money trickled into. So they, just because they have financial assets, have benefited from it, and quite handsomely. So the president used to critique it. Now he's out there saying, no. Now that's what we have to do. Quantitative easing was the problem when he was candidate Trump. Now he is saying that quantitative tightening, the opposite, is a problem, and now we have to go back to quantitative easing. So he's either trying to dance himself out of the box that he's put himself in, again, by taking ownership of the economy and the stock market, and now he's trying to say, okay, I am responsible for all the good stuff that happened, but if and when this thing corrects again or really goes down, it's the Federal Reserve's fault. See, I told you, they were a problem all over the time. I mean, it's their fault. It's not my fault. Again, from my perspective, that's poor leadership. But nevertheless, that's what he's going to do. The other option is he's changed his mind. Somebody has convinced him otherwise. When he was candidate Trump, that was a problem. Quantitative easing and what the Federal Reserve was doing, lowering interest rates, was a problem. Now he wants lower interest rates, and he wants quantitative easing to continue. So those are really your two options, folks. He's either trying to dance himself out of the box that he has put himself in, and he's trying to set the stage if and when something corrects, whether in the economy and or the stock market. He doesn't want to take responsibility for it, so he's going to lay it at the feet of the Federal Reserve. Or he honestly believes that this country has to lower interest rates and embark on another round of quantitative easing. Now, if he honestly believes the latter, that this country has to embark on lower interest rates and quantitative easing number 4, he will not get my vote in 2020. If that's what he honestly believes. If he's just doing this to dance himself out of a box, I can live with that, because he's at least bringing to the foreground the Federal Reserve. And if you've been following this podcast for the past couple months since we've been on air, we have been stating the only way that you can solve the structural problems and issues that face this country, and this would be true of some other countries too, but I'm primarily concerned with the United States of America, you must end the Federal Reserve, and you must abolish the federal income tax. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Anybody who comes talking about something else, I am not going to take them seriously. So, regardless of what happens, the Federal Reserve, to some extent, is going to be front and center. Is it going to be front and center through the whole campaign? I mean, if I had it my way, yes, it would be and should be. Will it be? That remains to be seen. That remains to be seen. There's going to be a whole host of issues. This, however, once people become even somewhat educated on the topic, I think they will become infuriated with what the Federal Reserve is, how they operate, what they've done, specifically over the past decade, because it's been the pedal to the metal. But you are also going to touch on a political argument that will cross party lines. Again, those of you who have been listening for a while know that I am no fan of the Democrats, just because I perhaps may not be voting for Donald Trump, depending on what happens. The Democrats will not get my vote, none of them. None of them. Not because I'm anti-Democrat Party, but because these candidates are terrible and their policies are a reflection of that. And I will not support that at all. There is no middle ground with them. They're all going to outdo each other to get further and further to the left. And the policies are just terrible. Even if they weren't going further and further to the left, the policies are a disaster for this country. The policies, a lot of them are already in effect to some extent, and this country is suffering the consequences of it directly. And we will be for, well, quite a while. And when I say quite a while, I mean the next few decades. So I will not be supporting them at all. However, when it comes to this issue of the Federal Reserve, along with other major banks, because they're all joined at the hip, you have to understand that the likes of Bernie Sanders and Senator Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, they attack the banking sector. They will attack the Federal Reserve. So I have to give them credit for that, for identifying the banking system, fractional reserve banking, and the Federal Reserve as a problem. The problem is, with them, they have no idea how to solve it. I mean, they actually make it worse with a lot of their solutions, which actually, I mean, if it makes it worse, are not solutions. So instead of actually just saying they want to abolish it or this, that, or the other, they may want to take even more control of it, which you're not going to trust crazy Bernie or Pocahontas with a printing press. They shouldn't have it. The Federal Reserve shouldn't have it. Politicians shouldn't have it. The price of capital, the cost of money should be in your hands and my hands, like any other market. The market determines the price of oil, the price of lumber, the price of soybeans. And guess what happens? You have oil that comes to the market. You have gasoline you can put in your car. You have groceries at the supermarket, okay? Stuff works out. Lumber gets to the lumber yard, which ends up on your property to build a house, okay? It works. There is no central bank for lumber. There's no central bank for oil, for soybeans, none of that. The market works. Transactions will determine the cost of capital. So get rid of the Federal Reserve. They don't need to be there. Don't need to be there because they destroy your purchasing power. That's what they say inflation is. That's why they say, well, we can tolerate 1% to 2%, more or less 2%, because it's a slow boil. Okay? That's like the analogy of throwing a frog into a boiling pot of water. He's going to jump right out because of the adrenaline surge. He's going to jump right out. But if you can put the frog in a lukewarm pot of water and then slowly turn up the heat, well, he's going to get comfy. And then before he knows it, he's cooked. Well, that's the same thing of inflation. That's why this has been a slow boil that's now starting to hit the exponential Okay, and that's why everything is starting to just unravel, and it's out of control. That's why you have national deficits that are in the trillions of dollars per year, when supposedly this is the best economy ever at the end of a business and credit cycle. You don't have that. But you do when you have the world catching up with itself to this exponential growth in money and debt and all of this stuff that we talk about all the time here. So this, in my opinion, will be front and center come the 2020 election. I hope it remains a major theme throughout the 2020 election, even if it's discussed by the Democrats. I want people engaged in what the Federal Reserve is, does, and how it operates, and what it's done to the vast majority of Americans in regards to their savings and their retirement. And let's not even go off of that tangent right now with that retirement crisis and having no earnings on any type of savings account. So this will be a major issue. And I don't know if we have to read in between the lines, because is the president starting to tweet and actually issue official statements from the White House? Because you got to read between the lines, and is something coming? Is there going to be a downturn in this economy? Is there going to be a stock market crash or major correction like we saw in the fourth quarter of 2018? These are serious questions, because he's starting to dance. I think he's getting a little nervous here. Like, can we keep this going for another year and a half? I mean, if it was this November, I'd say, yeah, he could probably keep this thing going. He could keep this facade going for another 6 months. But a year and a half? Well, he's going to struggle with that one. And so he's starting to dance. But we'll see if he's dancing or if he's actually changed his mind on this. I really hope he hasn't changed his mind. But, you know, when you have the likes of his economic counsel out there, Larry Kudlow, saying we're not going to see, you know, an increase in interest rates in the rest of my lifetime, I mean, that's a little disheartening. That's a little disheartening. But we're going to keep our eye on this one, because it's important not only to the country but to this program. And even if it does become front and center in this presidential campaign, it will be front and center on this program. You can bet on that one. Now, real briefly, in regards to sanctuary cities and illegal immigration, again, you know the stance of this podcast here as far as illegal immigration is concerned. It is an issue. It needs to be dealt with. There needs to be comprehensive reform. There needs to be proper enforcement of the laws that already exist. The building of the wall, okay, you want to build a wall? Go ahead. I don't have any problem with that if it's done, obviously, properly and in the right places where it will be effective by those who are on the ground risking their lives every day. You listen to the people who are in the trenches every day. They will always have some of the best solutions. So you got to listen to them. And I applaud Trump on that, for going down to the border and walking it and talking with the men and women who serve on the border and say, look, Mr. President, this is where we have this many number of crossings, this type of crime, and this is where a wall will be most effective. So he's good at that, and I attribute that to his successful career in construction and real estate. I mean, he was on the job site asking site foremen and men who were working, how can we make this better? What's the problem? Blah, 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 blah. That's how you make money. That's how you squeeze as much juice out of the fruit as you can. You go and you talk to the guys who are on the ground who have the solutions. So I applaud the president for that. Again, if you've been following this podcast for a while, it's, according to me anyway, more than just the illegal immigration. It's also the drug trafficking, and it's also the human trafficking and sex trafficking. Again, this is something that I believe President Trump was trying to sort of introduce to the American public, that this just isn't about illegal immigration and people jumping this border illegally. They can't get in line, they don't want to wait, blah, blah, blah. It has more to do with that. And that's sort of on the same lines as potentially this Federal Reserve thing. Just sort of inching it out there, a slow boil, just sort of setting the stage, if you will, just getting people ready for some things that are going to potentially come out with it. Okay, and again, we saw the thing with Bob Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots. You have the other, the Nexium story that I broke, that I was telling you guys about last week. The actress was going to jail, and then you have some other people who were going to court in regards to that quote-unquote sex cult and that whole ring. So you have Hollywood, you have business, you have people who are involved with some big money and some big names who get involved with this. Okay, so I just think it's something, it's just, again, it's that slow drip, drip, drip. And I think there's even some connection not necessarily with the trafficking part, but just the broader view of celebrities and the wealthy and the quote-unquote elite, because then you saw all of those parents getting their children into college with the scam, and that's been going on for decades. So there's going to be some big names dropping. There already have been, but we've only known the ones recently. I mean, what about the people who did it 20 years ago? I mean, are those names going to drop? I mean, they probably will. They probably will. So that's the whole thing, that the president, I think, is sort of priming and setting the stage for the American people to say, look, you might really follow these people and think that they're the best thing since sliced bread, but guess what? They got some pretty ugly skeletons in their closet. So the funny thing in regards to the sanctuary cities is, look, he's telling the Democrats, look, put up or shut up. I mean, put your money where your mouth is. I mean, you want to be liberal and you want to be these bleeding heart liberals and just take everybody and their mother from all of these countries without knowing who they are, what their intentions are, and just say, okay, let's put them in our sanctuary cities. Okay, well, we'll put them in a bus and we'll send them there. We'll send them to Los Angeles and in San Francisco, in a whole host of others. Portland, Oregon, Seattle, wherever they are. Makes no difference. I mean, he's calling them out. Now, whether this is legal, what the legality of it is, and I mean, that's going to be argued. But again, I don't think that's the ultimate point as to whether or not it's going to be done. It's the president throwing a story out there that gets attention and makes people think about this topic. Because it's important. Because now what do you see from all of these Democrats in these Democratic cities? Oh, no, don't do that. Don't you dare send them to these cities. Why? You want them. You want them until they're right there ready to go. Then it's, oh, well, you can't do that. The president's just playing politics with these people. Oh, really? Like you haven't been. Like you haven't been. You set up these sanctuary cities just as a call, just as a beacon to say, look, when you do make it in here, because you're going to, because we don't take our laws seriously here, you're going to vote for the Democratic Party, right? Because we set up these sanctuary cities. Wink, wink, nod, nod, right? You're going to vote for us. President Trump's just saying, hey, you want them, here they are. They're not stopping because you won't let me put a wall up. You won't solve this problem. You won't put together comprehensive immigration reform. So, I mean, he's just calling them to task, and I love it. That's one of the best qualities of this president that I really admire. He's saying to these people, put up or shut up. Put your money where your mouth is. And now the Democrats don't know what to do. They're scrambling because nobody's ever done this to them. It's usually the other way around. Or at least they demonize and, go after the Republicans, and the Republicans usually just cower in their corner like a beat dog, and they whimper, and they give up. Well, Trump doesn't do that. He doesn't go into the corner and cry. He comes out swinging, and that's what he says. He's a counterpuncher. He doesn't usually throw the first blow, but when you attack him, he's coming back, and he's coming back harder, and that needs to be respected because the Democrats have done a lot of damage to this country. So have the Republicans. But when it comes to this issue, I mean, they just want open borders. And then they have the audacity to not want to take them in their sanctuary cities. They say, oh, no, we can't do that. It's a political ploy and this, that, and the other. I mean, how stupid do they think the American people are? I mean, again, that's part of Trump's political genius on this, too, because that's going to backfire because a lot of people are going to say, hey, well, yeah, I mean, I supported the sanctuary city, so what's the big deal? Why are you now saying they can't do it? Now you're going into all the arcane stuff with, well, it's not really legal. The president doesn't have the authority to do this. So it's like, come on. You're either the bleeding heart liberal who just wants all of these families together. You don't want them separated and put into, what they think are basically concentration camps. I mean, if you listen to them, that's what they think they are down there. Well, why wouldn't you welcome them going to sanctuary cities where they're going to be safe? And if your economic policies are as grand and great as you think they are, well, then they're not going to have any problem finding work in a house. And, of course, they'll take part of all of the entitlements if they need, they just need a little bit of help, which I thought that's what the whole purpose was of the Democratic Party, especially being progressive and definitely being socialist. So I don't know what the big problem is. They should be welcomed with open arms because you have a huge exodus of a lot of people leaving California, going to lower taxed states. Wow, what a surprise there. Who didn't see that one coming? You taxed people too much and they want to leave. They want to go to Colorado. They want to go to Arizona. They want to go to Texas. What a big surprise. Well, I mean, maybe you need some of these illegal immigrants there, right? So what's the big problem? So kudos to Trump for that one because that was just a great form of political jiu-jitsu right there. And it just, again, shows the blatant hypocrisy of the Democrats. But, of course, when it's the Democrats, they don't care. They don't care. So we'll see, though, what happens during the election, because this ain't going away either. This will definitely be another issue in the front ground, too. And lastly, the Bob Mueller report is set to be released, the redacted version, this Thursday. Again, you got the same names out there: Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Jerry Nadler, Adam Schiff. You know, what are they going to do? It's not going to be enough. They're going to say, well, what's this? What's all this redaction? Why is all this redacted? That's going to be the first thing out of their mouths. It already has been. Now they're just going to have a prop. They're going to have a piece of paper in their hand. So every time they're in front of the camera now, they're just going to hold it up because it's going to be released not just to Congress, but to the public. So they're going to hold it up and they're going to say, look, what's all this? What's all this? And then they'll organize the pages probably in a certain way where it looks like every page is redacted and redacted and redacted. That's what they're going to do. I mean, and then they're just going to say, well, what's the president got to hide? Well, don't you worry, Adam Schiff will tell you, because we got the dirt. We got the dirt. Bob Mueller couldn't find it with $30 million and 18 angry Democrats for 2.5 years, but I got it. No, you don't. No, you don't. And this is going to be another form of jiu-jitsu, but this time it better be not just political jiu-jitsu, but legal jiu-jitsu, because this attorney general, along with hopefully the broader Department of Justice and FBI, goes in and investigates the investigators of what was a coup against the President of the United States, what was a spying job on a presidential candidate. This is a shame. This is a huge scam. This is utterly disgusting and disgraceful in the United States of America in the 21st century. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen, and this again goes to the highest levels of government in the Obama administration, to President Obama himself, to himself. His Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder. I mean, he's another scumbag. Then you got Susan Rice. You have, again, the names: Jim Comey, Peter Strzok. We know the names. We go over them all the time. It's going to be, I hope, legal jiu-jitsu, and these people, this country has to have one legal system, not a two-tiered justice system. Because if it does, I mean, then there is no country. There is no country. The Democrats are fine with it being open borders. We're supposed to be a country of laws. We're not supposed to have open borders. We're supposed to have borders. We're supposed to have people who are coming here really based off of merit. What can they contribute to this country at this point in time? I mean, it's our country. I mean, just look at it like your house. Do you just let anybody who knocks on your door into your house? No, of course not. You want to know who they are. If it's somebody you know, yeah, come on in. Or if it's something that you find trustworthy, okay, you're going to invite them in. Most people aren't going to do that. And that's rational. And that's not xenophobic or anything like that as far as, being afraid of immigrants. There's nothing to do with it whatsoever. It's just, it's your house. You want them in here or not? You say, yeah, well, okay, you want to come in my house? That's fine. But here's a process. Here's the law. Here's what you got to do. This is common sense. This ain't difficult. So why people go off the rails on this, Nancy Pelosi, because she thinks that AG Bill Barr is off the rails. Why does she go off the rails and all these Democrats when it comes to immigration? This is just common sense. It's just common sense. Unfortunately, common sense isn't common. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you. As always, please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. We're going to keep you updated on these stories and a lot more to come because it will be getting interesting. This is the Capitol News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.